Hey everyone, welcome back to The Whole Picture, where we chat with your favorite entrepreneurs about their passion projects, hobbies, and deep interests, the things that keep them in the game for the long term. Today we're here with Josh Forti, who's the founder of the Golden Mike Method. He's a follower of Christ, a father, a husband, and an entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Well, thank you, Brittany. I am pumped to be here. We're about to have a good time. I'm very excited.
We are indeed. How's it going for you? How did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. I got to hang out with my wife and daughter. We went hiking. My daughter is 15 months now, and she's walking, and she probably hiked a good quarter mile up in the mountains. It was crazy. I had her little legs going there. So we had a great weekend, and back into the swing of things. We're getting ready for an event coming up. All of the wonderful things of juggling of life, fatherhood, and business and entrepreneurship and all the things. So it was good. It was good. How about yours?
Great. Yeah, same. We're getting the flow of New York a little bit. It's every
Oh,
weekend
that's
is
right. You're in New
different.
York. Right.
It's the a couple days before this, it was like in the 60s, so it was amazing. Everyone came out of the woodwork and was like out, and now it's back to like 20 something. So we're
Oof.
we're back in it.
I
Um,
couldn't do New York. Too many people. Way too many people. I used to want to live there, but I'm very happy with where I'm at now. So I'm
yes,
glad you
yeah,
enjoy it,
we're
though.
we're opposite. Yeah, like you're like hiking in like this like picturesque. I saw your photos, like picturesque, beautiful place, and I'm
Yeah,
like squeezed in a like subway car.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's great. Well, so you mentioned your beautiful daughter, and I want to get into like your family life and all that, but I kind of want to start back at the beginning because you had a similar upbringing to me. Like you have a much bigger family, but you were homeschooled and had kind of a similar upbringing. So tell me a little bit about like family life growing up. Like when you were growing up, did you picture like having the family that you have now, or like did you kind of have this different vision of, your future at that point in your life?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what my life was going to look like this. That's for sure. And for a little bit of context, for those that don't know, I have a company now called the Golden Mike, and we've helped our clients do tens of millions of dollars in sales online. Our kind of our claim to fame is doing that without ads, and doing it through attention, getting attention on stuff. But I did not grow up as an entrepreneur or in this world at all. I was born in Wisconsin. At age 1, I moved to LA or suburbs of LA, lived there for like 10 years. Don't remember a whole ton of that. And then when I was 11 years old, my parents packed us all in the back of an RV. I have 7 brothers and sisters. And so there's 8 of us. We've gotten back on an RV and drove across country and ended up in Indiana on a farm out there. And so a lot of big shifts early on. And I was homeschooled kind of throughout all that. But I spent well, actually all of my teenage years on a farm in Indiana, being homeschooled in a very, very small setting. And I'm actually very grateful that that was the case. And, I have no desire to go back to that life. But I'm also very thankful that that was the upbringing. And I think that, people can get resentful or be frustrated about things, whatever. I'm like, I have none of that, right? I have nothing but love for, my family, for the place I grew up. Very small world, very, very different, right? They see the world and completely differently than I do. And I think early on, I remember, like, we as entrepreneurs, like, you just kind of know you're wired differently. And then there's like, you kind of start to realize it probably early on, and you don't really know, like, you can't, you know what I mean? Like, you can't quite put to words, but you're like, none of this quite makes sense, right? And so I always knew that I wanted to be rich, I wanted to be famous, I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want anybody to be able to tell me what to do, right? And like, that's kind of been a driving force through my life, is like, no one will tell me what to do, when to do it, how to do it, with who I can do it with. No, I will do what I want to do, right? And so there was like kind of that factor, that kind of like driving factor in there. And so I think there was the knowing that I was different, knowing that I wanted more, not knowing what that looked like at all. I actually thought I was going to be farming and have that's where I grew up, farming stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the early days of being homeschooled on a farm out there.
Yeah. So that's what you thought. You thought you were gonna be a farmer. You thought that was like it, but you knew that you had this like difference in you,
Yes.
like that you didn't want to be told what to do. I'm curious how that was, in a family that's large, because typically they have to run very like structured because there's so
Yeah,
many kids.
incredibly structured. Like my mom hates me joking about this, but like, mom, I love you. But it was like a military school, not in like a bad way, just in like very, very structured. Like, we all had checklists with like 30-minute blocks of what our day was going to look like, and you'd go and check, and off. And again, not a bad thing. I mean, I hated it at the time, but the discipline that it taught me, and like the ripple effects of this were actually very, very good, right? But how I always back then, how I would describe, if you would be like, what do you mean by different? I would have told you, I think college is dumb and I'm not gonna go, right? Like that was like my version of who needs college, right? Obviously, it was much more than that, but that was kind of how I would have defined it.
Yeah. Where do you think that came from? Because like your parents, if they put you all in an RV and moved you guys, so like that is inherently a different choice than like most families make, right? So like, and they homeschooled you guys. So do you think that like your desire to like have this different life or like that ability that you have, did that come from seeing them make those decisions that weren't like typical, or was it something like innate in you, or where did that come from?
I think we all have things that in us that, like I'm sure you have things in you that like you feel have been developed over time, but are also very innate to you, right? And how they have manifest themselves, perhaps, is going to be very much dictated, or probably has been very much dictated by your environment or who you grew up around, or things of that nature. And I think entrepreneurs, probably are much more aware of that than others are. Um, I think the desire to, like, I think that me just being wired differently, I just think that's innate to me, right? I used to think that it wasn't. I used to think that, oh, anybody can just go and, you know, do whatever. And I'm like, I think everybody has the ability to, but I just don't think anybody's wired that way. But I think that rather than like, this is what made me that way, I think that watching my parents move us all across country and my dad leave his job and, start driving a truck, we just moved, right? It almost just gave me permission, right? It was like so many people, like imagine, someone right now who spent their entire life where they grew up, they got up at the exact same time every day. They watched both of their parents clock in and clock out at a 9 to 5 job. They went to school at the same time. They never challenged the status quo. They never did anything differently. They pay their taxes. They fill their 401k. They are literally, it's robotic, right? And it's like the concept of challenging the status quo, it's not even in their, like, that's not even a thing in their brain, right? And again, that's not being derogatory. I'm sure that there's things in my brain that I'm not even aware of, right? But it's like that path isn't there. Whereas, me, I'm 10 years old. I had my 11th birthday as we're driving out, right? So it's like, those are some very formable years of the mind, right? And so like, for me, it was like, I look around and who says I have to do this? Like, what do you mean I have to go to college? Or what do you mean I have to go to, like, what do you mean? Says who? Right. And so I think that, how my parents operated, and, obviously we have very, 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 very different lives. Right. But those fundamental principles of being like, well, says who? Like, we're just going to go do this and no one's going to stop us. Like, you can just do things. Right. I think that is what gave me permission in a lot of ways to go build the life that I built now.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting because I know several other homeschoolers in my life, and the vast majority of them are entrepreneurs to some degree
Yeah.
because we did like very early on in my life, I was like mapping out my curriculum and being like making a case to my mom to let me sleep later because this is when I'm gonna do the things. I have it all.
Yes.
And
100%.
I know like my stepson is 11, he's the age that you're talking about, and he has not had that experience. He's gone to public school his whole life. So he's
Mm.
not had that at all. And so it's so different to see, like that training that we have early does, like you said, give us permission to like be different.
Well, yeah, and it teaches you, it forces you to think,
Mhm.
right? It forces you to have models and structures of the world, right? I mean, one of the things that I'm incredibly grateful for is how I was homeschooled, right? As you like, and my mom was my teacher, right? And we had curriculum, obviously, and different things, but most people go through life following, like we said, the status quo. We're tried to put into this box, and it's like the box isn't bad. What's bad is the fact that they told you had to be there. They didn't give you a reason. They didn't tell you why, right? They didn't tell you how to think. No one taught you anything. And then all of a sudden, when you do wake up at 20 or 25 or 30 or 40 years old, and if you do want to change something, you're screwed because you literally don't know how to think. And when I was, 14, 15 years old, my schoolwork was reading apologetics and studying the major religions and how they were different and how they were similar, right? And it was like my belief system got pushed, right? My models of how the world operate got pushed, and it was like, oh no, you have to actually think through things. You have to think about third and fourth and fifth order of degree consequences. And, you know, I grew up very religious and good and bad to that, obviously. But one of the, you know, the positives of it is I studied truth, and it was like, what is truth? How do we get to that? How do we look at facts? How do we look at data? How do we know what can change and what can't? And when you start to do that, right? Like it, it's almost like a superpower. It's like a cheat code on life. And you know, we as entrepreneurs, or for anyone listening right now, it's like if you want to have a really fulfilled life, if you want to have a life that is filled with options, that's filled with, you know, that's filled with, you know, things that fulfill you, that you designed, right? It doesn't come by having lots of money. Like that's necessary for options in some cases, right? But it's like money is not the cheat code that's going to get you ahead, or, you know, being inherently like having a higher IQ than someone. No, it's like it's actually learning how things work, how to think through things, right? How to see the the whole picture, right? And like actually look at things, break things down, reconstruct them, put them back together, and understand how things fit. And I think one of the things that I realized was I remember I remember being at a point in my life where I did not like my life. And it was after I'd become an entrepreneur at this point. And so these concepts were new, but like, you know, like in entrepreneurship, real quick, you realize, all right, well, all the responsibility falls on me. Like everything's my fault, right? Like, and so, oh, but I remember sitting there not being, not liking where I was at in life. And I'm reading this book on the brain. And it's like breaking down how we make decisions and the beliefs and everything like that. And there was this moment, and this wasn't the exact sentence, but there was this moment I'm reading this and I'm like, oh my gosh, everything in my life that I'm experiencing is a sum of my decisions, right? Like all of it. But the problem is that if I make a decision, I only consciously am aware of like the one or two things that it affects immediately. I'm not aware of all the million reasons that led up to me making that decision, all the amplification effect of that decision, right? How all the things are interacted, what that changes, what that limits me to do and forces me to do, right? It's like, to me, it was just like, I'm going to, you know, drink a soda or something, right? Or I'm going to, you see what I'm saying? And so when like, once that aha moment happened for me where I was like, wait a second, I can literally design any, like I can create things. I can move. I have power. It very quickly became a game of how do I understand how everything works? How do I pull it all apart so that I know that if I make this decision, what's it going to affect at every area? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
I know
yeah.
that was a tangent, but
No, it's interesting to me because it's like you're pulling on these skills that you learned early on. Like that was your schoolwork that you were like studying like the fundamentals of truth and stuff. And I'm curious, was that a straight line for you? Like, did you go from that homework and like that and like were you obsessed with truth going into your entrepreneurship and your career journey, or did you like kind of stray away from it and be like, you know, that's how I grew up, so I'm gonna go this opposite way for a while and then like return to it? Like what's been your path in that?
you know, I think it depends about how you look at look at it, right? Um, it certainly didn't feel like a straight line, right? I don't think anything does in life. I think it, you know, you kind of feel like you spin in circles for a while, and then you're like, oh wait, I was moving, and then you like go spin in circles for a while more, and you never actually feel like you're moving or moving in a straight line, right? But you kind of are.
Yeah.
And you know how like if you look at like a stock chart or like a, you know, I'm big into like Bitcoin and stuff, you like look at the things and it's like if you look at the day to day, it's like right up and but if you just zoom out, it's kind of like right this.
Yeah.
So I think you know it really kind of depends upon the how you want to frame it and how you want to look at it because I think that entrepreneurs have a massive competitive advantage in life towards those who are not. And I'm not saying that everyone should be an entrepreneur. I'm just saying we have an advantage. And the reason we have an advantage is because by default, when you choose entrepreneurship, I'm sure you felt this, right? It's like you by default kind of just accept responsibility for everything. And so if you accept responsibility for everything, it's like now you're open, now you can change everything. And so like the ability of for me to pursue truth and religion and, you know, like structure of what's right and wrong and fulfillment in life and the ability to design every outlet, like all those things happened or I was able to do because I was an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
if I wasn't, I don't think I would have ended up in the same spot. But I mean I became an entrepreneur because I hated being told no. And I mean, I hated it. Like I like there's this Tucker Carlson clip around that's like, I don't really watch the news or any, I don't even watch Tucker, but it's like, he's like, I have a fundamental inherent problem at my core with people telling me like, no. He's like, if you tell me no, like at my core, I must do it simply because you told me I couldn't. Right. And I'm like, that, right? Like that, I have to, right? And so I hated not being able to do things. And primarily that reason was due to lack of money, right? Not always, but a majority of the time. And so for me, I was like, all right, if I can get a lot of fame, if I can make a bunch of money, then no one can tell me no. And that was the driving force. And when I got into entrepreneurship and went full in, I did not need God at that point. I was like,
Yeah.
God, thanks for everything you've done. Don't like where I'm at. Don't like where this whole religion thing got me now. I'm going to go make some money. I'm going to go get rich. I'll come back to you. Right.
Yeah.
When I'm ready. By the way, terrible advice. Don't negotiate with God, right? Don't tell him that. He has ways of, making sure that you are put in your place, right? But that was kind of that starting point was, I'm going to go get rich and famous. I'll come back to God. And through a series of several events from, my brother dying in a helicopter crash, my older brother, to, my wife getting very, very sick, to, losing a lot of money, making a lot of money, like a lot of success and failure, it led me back to Jesus. I say religion, but religion was secondarily to Christ. But like I wouldn't have ended up there if I wouldn't have gone through that journey, right? So in a way, it's a very straight line, but in a completely separate way, it looks like a complete mess.
Yeah, I asked because I had a similar experience where I was raised very religious and like I was in Sunday school, as a child, like so young. And that led me all the way to like 20, maybe 18, 19, 20. And then I like took a hard right because I was like that's what I knew
Right.
and I was okay there and I wanted to experience something different. And I went into the world of like whatever feels right to you. Everyone's got their opinion and very like kind of almost a passive view of the world.
Mm,
And that is kind of how I felt like when I went into entrepreneurship, it was like because I wanted to do whatever I wanted. And so whatever anybody else wants to do, that's valid. Like I kind of had this like live and let live, which I still agree with to a certain extent. But so, and then it wasn't until very recently where I like came back to like, okay, but there are certain elements of truth and there
right.
is absolute truth. And so like I kind of came back to it. So I was curious if that was your experience where you like kind of found your way back to it through
I
this.
think, yeah. And I think anyone that searches genuinely without any form of predetermined, I'm gonna search so that I can prove what I already believe, right? Not that. Anyone that search must end up at the conclusion that there is at least one absolute truth, right? There has to be. And so I think if you can start there, like as an entrepreneur, we've got the Golden Mike, which is designed to create leverage in businesses and make more money and create freedom. I mean, our whole saying is get paid, be free, right? I mean, you're part of it, right? And we have all these things that we want, whether it's freedom or power or control or anything. And it's like, okay, great. All those things are good. And believe me, every element of my life is designed around exactly how I want it. But like, it's got to be built on something. And I see so many entrepreneurs, myself included, for so long that that wanted to build this life of freedom, this life of power, this life of control, this life by design, this life, call it whatever we want to call it, right? But we fail to go back and be like, okay, but what's the foundation that it sits on, right? And like the basic scripture, I'm sure many people have heard it. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the foolish man built his house upon the sand. It's like so basic, right? But if we don't start there, then you're going to end up with it all collapsing anyway. And I think that's truth, right? Like whatever that foundation is, there's got to be something that's firm.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. And I find that now on smaller scales in my business always. Like once I saw that as a universal principle, like that you have to have this solid foundation, you have to, know what you believe and understand who you are. Then I see it like I'm in marketing now. Like I see it
The
as
best.
a small scale. I'm like, don't build your entire platform on TikTok and then have none of your customer data. Like that's building your house on sand, right? Like, because
Yeah.
that
From
platform
a
could go
tactical, yeah,
away.
100%.
It's like, so now I see it throughout, the more that I get back into, I guess, Christianity, I don't know. The more that I get back into that world, I see these principles everywhere.
And I'm
So
curious when you say, I guess, Christianity, define that a little bit more because I understand the struggle. So, like, where are we studying right now?
yeah, so the reason I say I guess Christianity is because it's more so been a relationship with God that
Yep.
I've gotten back into. And I think that my stance used to be like, I used to say God, the universe, the angels, whatever you believe in. That's what I used to say. Like, and so it's
You're
like
so
that.
cliche, really.
I know. And I thought I was being unique. That's the crazy. I was like, that's like the new way to look at it. That's the new age way to look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't mean to make fun of anyone that said, but it's like that was my belief system. And so coming out of that, it's like I'm still even like saying the same thing. Like I realized I was like praying all of that time, but I was like scared to say like God only.
Mm.
So it was God, universe, the angels, like whatever.
Interesting.
So now it's more so a relationship with him, a relationship with reading the Bible, and then like Christianity is like I go to church and like they're like more so, they're principled and like we have a baptism night, we have these things, and that's
Mm.
like structure that I haven't fully embraced yet, I guess.
Ah,
So
okay.
that's like
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
the difference.
Interesting. Yeah. I can relate actually. When I left, I never like was like, God, you don't exist, right? I'm not that dumb, right? I'm like, but it's like, I'm like, I don't really need you right now. It was like God exists and there's a bunch of religions and they're all basically the same thing. And like one's probably right, but like I'm not going to be the one to figure that out because they all basically sound the same. And then like when my brother died, it was like, all right, God, you have my attention, right? And it took like another 2.5 to 3 years before I went from God, you have my attention to wait a second. Every religion claims God, right? And like the God of the Bible is different, right, than the God of Islam, than the God of, you know, well, Buddhism, and you know what I mean? Like not technically there, but like you know what I'm saying? And it's like, wait, like there is in Christianity, like there is a specific name for that God, right? And what I like to say is, like, yes, you can have your God, but mine has a name, right? And his name is Jesus. And for me, that connection point, and like I can remember back to like before that when I was like all figuring it out. I'm like, this doesn't make it. I don't get religion. Religion sucks. There's a bunch of structures, a bunch of rules, right? And it was like God is awesome, and I like know he's this powerful being and all that, but it's not really personal. Like I don't really have a like I do have a relationship with him, but you know what I mean? Like it wasn't I couldn't put a face to it or a name to it. And all of a sudden, when I understood relationship for the first time is when I came back to Jesus. And what that did was it forced me to go, this is true, and these ones aren't. Because if you accept Jesus as who he says he is, and it's very clear who he says he is, right? Then that is in direct or contradiction to who everyone else says he is, right? It's like I have a lot of Muslim friends, right? Some very, very dear friends. I love them, to death. And we debate, on stuff like this all the time. And it's like, they're like, like we believe in Jesus too. And I'm like, I love you, but you don't believe that Jesus is who he says he is, right? And so it's like, we're not talking about the same thing. And once that relationship was there for me, and once I could like put a name to it, now all of a sudden religion made sense. Because it's like, if I got married, which I am, it's like, hey, there's some rules you got to follow. Don't sleep with other women, right? Like, insane. But if I'm not married and I'm just out in the world doing whatever I want, and someone's like, don't sleep with anybody, you're like, what do you mean, right? Like, who says who? And it would feel constricting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 I was curious about that because that's like my perspective of religion as a kid was constrictive. Like
So constrictive. It's the
it was
worst.
this. And I also grew up as a ballerina. So that was like and it was a Christian troupe. So it was like, that's a very restrictive world. If no, no, it's
Oh,
very restrictive. So
yeah.
16 years of my life was ballet and Christianity. And like, got out and was like, no rules ever, never
Yeah.
again. So I was curious what your experience has been coming back into it because you said like you're allergic to no, like don't want to
Yeah.
hear no. So like what was it that brought you back into like accepting a religion, accepting Christianity, coming from that perspective of like I want to be free to do what I want to do?
It wasn't fun. It wasn't easy. I call it the freedom paradox, which is very simply put, in order to have whatever it is that you want most, you have to do the opposite, basically. So, in order for me to be fully free, I had to have complete surrender. And I remember being at a time in my life where this was the week between Christmas and New Year's, 3 years ago now, 2022. Yeah. So 2.5 years ago. And like watching a sermon, it was on YouTube. And it was like, that was the night that I ended up giving my life back to Christ. But like up until that point, I just wanted what I wanted, and I wanted, freedom and control and nobody to tell me what to do. Like I wanted to be free so badly, right? And I wanted to be free from pain and free from not even responsibility, but just like I just was like, didn't want all the stress and all of it all the time. It was never ending. And it was like, I loved it, but I was also in the process of trying to escape from it, right? And it was like, it didn't make any sense. And this pastor gets up and he gives this sermon, and he gets up there and he's like, I'm going to tell you about Jesus tonight. And I'm like, okay, well, now you have my attention, because I wasn't planning. It was like I had songs on. It was like a worship like thing. I just had it on the background, and then he gets on there like an hour into the thing, and he's, I'm going to tell you about Jesus tonight. So I'm going to tell you about Jesus in a way you've never heard before. And I'm like, he's literally in a room full of pastors. He's preaching to pastors, right? And he gets up there and he gives this like 45-minute long message about who Jesus was that I had never heard before. It was a version that like I was taught growing up that Jesus was a shepherd boy that loved the little children, right? Who wants to follow that guy, right? Like who wants to be around a pacifist, right? Who wants to I'm a dude. Like come on, like you know what I mean? I want power, freedom, control. Like he gets up there and he's like, he is the king, right? Like he's the king of it all, right? Like King of Kings, Lord of Lords, every knee will bow to him. Like he has complete rule and dominion. And he came down to earth and he walked as a man, as a human, like so massively significant. No other god or any other religion came down and walked among mere mortals, much less in poverty, right? And he knew what it was like to be tired, and he knew what it was like to weep and to feel sadness, right? He went through this human experience, and like the powers that be literally spit on the face of God and ripped his beard off, right? Like that is the experience he went through. And then he died and he beat all of sin and darkness for all eternity forever. Hallelujah. Amen. And like that guy's the king and he wants a relationship with me. And all I have to do is just surrender to him. Right? That's it. If I just give it all up and just surrender, I can be free. And it there was a lot of emotions that night, right? But it was like this moment of he's so much greater. He's so much more powerful. There's no way that I could possibly compete, right? Like if I had all the armies of all of mankind, I could not compete with his power. And I'm like, and he loves me, and he says he's going to take away my yoke, take away my burden. All I got to do is surrender. And I don't know, for some reason, it wasn't that hard to say, I'm all right with saying no that night, right? Like, or saying yes that night and surrendering. And so that was the moment for me where I was like, that is when I became free for the first time,
Yeah.
right? Like weight of the world off my shoulder of like, oh, the king's on my side. Got it, right? And so, ironically, when that happened, because it was such at a core level, that gave me the ability to have freedom and choices and power and ability to build in life moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like I don't know how to quite phrase it, but it's like your definition of freedom, it didn't change, but the way that you were like you were coming about freedom from a control perspective of like I'm going to control everything in my environment to make myself be able to be free. And you're saying like you had to make just one choice and then you had freedom ultimately because of this
Yeah,
choice that you made in
I
this.
went from wanting freedom from to getting freedom to, right? So like I wanted freedom from pain, from people telling me no, freedom from people, right? All those things. And God was like, or Jesus was like, nah, I got that. Right? I'll give you the freedom to go be who I called you to be, to go build, to go lead, to go, right? And I'm free from because of him. And now, and because of that, I am free too. And that shift right there, it's like, it's an empowering, right? Because now it's like, yeah, I surrendered, but like, it's like imagine this entity, this being, this thing that was literally unlimitedly powerful, right? Like the most power, like Elon Musk times a billion, right? And he's like, I'm just gonna give you all my power, right? It's like, who would say no to that? And oh, by the way, I love you and I'm behind you and I want what's best for you. And just let me just take away all of the nastiness and all the burdens in your life, right? It's like, yes, that I would like that. And as soon as you receive that, I don't know, it was weird. I hated religion. I hated rules, right? Like the concept of like, oh, you had to dress a certain way, or I like to make fun of Catholicism a lot, right? I'm like, oh, I have to kneel a certain way and do this. I'm like, well, this is all bullshit, right? Like this is ridiculous, right? But weirdly enough, as soon as that night happened, it was like, oh, my brain immediately went to, okay, where's structure? What's the map? What are the, like, how does the game work, right? How can I build? Like, how am I supposed to live? Like, how do I win at this, right? How do I be who I'm called to be? And then all of a sudden, God was like, oh, here's the Bible. And here's like some structure. And here's some rules that if you follow them, your life's going to be blessed. And by the way, you're going to experience a bunch of hardship. So just prepare for that. But like, here's how to deal with it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, religion's awesome. I mean, you know what I mean? For the first time, because the relationship was there first.
Yeah. That makes me think of I think it was Charlie Kirk who was talking about how like someone asked him about his decision to be a Christian or something, and he said, there's not a principle in the Bible that you can apply that would make your life worse.
That's
And
my wife to a T. Yeah.
it is so like I heard that and I was like, that can't be true. And then I'm like thinking more about it and I'm like, well, he's right though. As much as I want to be like, everyone should do what they want and we should all be, all these things that I went through in my 20s. My 20s were exploring. And so I went through all this stuff and then I look back and I'm like, it's messy. It's not fun. There's a lot of danger to it. And I do understand now, like I was told at like, I think it was 14 or 13, they like took this like piece of tape. All the girls were segmented and all the guys, they took this piece of tape and they put it on our shirts and said, this is your first relationship. And then they peeled it off and then they put it on the shirt again. So this is your second. See how it's less sticky?
Mm,
I at the time was like, this is terrible. You're telling me I can't date, I can't do anything. But now I kind of see their point. You
yeah.
do like lose, there's certain things that you just want your forever person to like that to be the first
To
time.
have, yeah.
So it totally makes sense now. I'm curious, like from that night, like you had that experience, what was it like for you? Like, did you feel like you were like relearning how to look at the world, how to look
Mm.
at like entrepreneurship? Like, did things immediately shift for you, or like how were you feeling like the next day?
Yeah. This is a great question. And this is the way that it was for me is because of who I am, right? Which is like if I'm going to do something, one of my old advisors at a summer camp that I would go to, he said, Josh, you are the type of person that tests the ice with both feet, right? Right. And I'm like, true. And so for me, it was a very drastic change on purpose, right? I intentionally did that. But the very first thing that was very clear that God was asking me to do was he's like, shut down the business, right? We had just done a really big launch, and done like $250,000, and so we ended up refunding most of that. Shutting down the business took me about 90 days, and I was like, I'm gonna go fix the parts of my life that I've broken, go back, make rights wrong, apologize for things like, and I need to get around wise counsel. And so it was a very drastic. My wife is like, "What are you doing?" Right? That's when I flew to Brad's house actually. That was I called him up and I was like, "I'm making some major changes. I need to be around wise people. Can I come hang out for a couple days?" And he's like, "Yeah, come on out." And so Leah and I, my wife and I, we flew out there and spent a couple days with him. And he's Latter Day Saints, or what many people know as Mormon. So we're not the same in that sense, but very similar morals, right? And that's when, like, that was the first time where up until that point, my brain was a very scary is not the right word. It was a ball of energy and chaos that was dangerous because I didn't know how to use it, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, if you're listening right now, you feel that way. It's like you have this superpower, this weapon, and it's like you don't even know how to use it yet. And Brad sat me down, and that's when he really opened up my mind to where he's like, okay, let me actually teach you how to think. Not let me just give you some exercises like your parents did growing up, which was very helpful. But like let me show you how to pull things apart from a first principle level. And so like that is where I started going and really starting to understand the world. And that's when life became really fun because you start to pull things apart and you're like, crap, that's broken. That okay, I see why I have to. And I'm new now, right? You talk about it in your 20s, you're exploring and the tape and all that. It's like the beautiful thing about Jesus is he just makes it all whole, right? Like all that's clean and white as snow. Yeah, you got to live with the consequence in the physical world, but as far as like who you are, it doesn't define you anymore. So I could look back at all the mistakes that I'd made and the people that I had wrong and all that, and it was just like, that's not me. That's who I was, right? And yeah, I got to go fix them, but like I didn't let it define me anymore, right? And so I would pull these things apart and I would go back and I'd fix them and I'd study things and I studied money and I studied wealth and how that worked and investing and in business and relationships and really like things started to get really fun. And my wife and I would sit down and we designed out, I mean, every single part of our life, right? And why? Why would we do that? I mean, down to like, why do we rent versus buy, right? Why do we eat this food versus this? Do we have a personal trainer? Should we have them come to the house or should I go to the gym, right? Should we drive? Like all the things, right? And that whole process of really starting to understand myself and understand the world and understand the world as much as one can, right? That became fun. And so, fast forward then to about, 2 years ago now, two and a half years ago now, it was like, oh, I'm ready now. Like now I'm ready to come back and now I'm ready to build something in business and to go put a message out to the world that is grounded in truth. And to be clear, I don't claim that I know the truth. I don't claim that I have all the truth or have all the answers. I just happen to know who the truth is, right? And when people are like, Josh, you think you're right all the time. And I'm like, you're dang right. I think that Jesus is right all the time, right? Like he is truth. And they're like, well, you just say it with such conviction. I'm like, if you show me where Jesus said, I'm just looking at what he said, right? And if you show me where I'm wrong, like to where I'm not interpreting that right, please, I would love that. But I think I'm right, not because I'm right, but because what I'm searching for is truth and trying to build my life on a foundation of that. And I think as entrepreneurs, if we want freedom, right, it's entrepreneurship's a drug, just like anything else. And it's this beautiful, amazing thing, but we can get swept up in it if we let that replace the thing that we should be searching for, right? And so entrepreneurship became fun again because entrepreneurship no longer defined me, right? Like my success, my dollar amount, the engagement, the amount of engagement on a video or, on an Instagram account or something, like that didn't define me anymore. Like there were days of my life for long stretches of time when my mood for the day directly correlated to how many likes I got on Instagram. That's insanity, right? But I'm sure you can relate. And I'm sure anyone listening has that thing, right? And getting out of that and going, all right, how does this all work? How do I make things right? How do I build from the ground up? It's been really fun and massive life changes. And one of the best compliments that I got from somebody that I really, really respect, and we hadn't talked in a while. I hadn't seen him in probably, I don't know, 2.5 years or so, 2, 3 years. And I saw him at FHL, not this past one, but the virtual one. And he looked at me. He's like, dude, it's good to see you. I was like, it's good to see you too. He said, how you been? I said, I grew up. He's like, yeah, you didn't just grow up, you grew forward. Right. And I'm like, that was a really cool compliment. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so massive life changes. And I think anyone can do that if they just change what they're searching for and where they're looking.
Yeah. So tell me about that decision. Like you went and sought out Brad and were like, is it because you saw someone who was living the way that you wanted to live that you picked him? And what made you think to go over there anyway? Like just to have that, like, I know that I want to make some changes. Is that your first instinct to see who is living the way that I want to live and just go directly to them? Or like what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, that's a good way to approach things, particularly in business or if you want something in life. But mine was a little bit deeper than that. not just he was living the life that I was living, it was he was the type of man that I wanted to be like, and I knew he had wisdom, right? Like we shared the same values. He like I knew that I was an idiot. I knew that I knew that me trying to figure things out on my own up until that point didn't work. And I'm like, I have to swallow my ego anyway. I might as well just admit everything, right? And so when I looked at Brad, I was like, okay, he's an entrepreneur. He's someone I respect. He's very smart. He's married. He's got 6 kids. He's got like first wife, right? You know what I mean? Like he's got a great reputation. Like he's religious. He's structured. He's disciplined. Like he is the type of person that I know is wise. And he was also the person that checked all of those boxes. It's like I know people that are great people that don't know a thing about business and their business life is a wreck or their finances are a wreck. I know people that are great in business and their personal life is a wreck. It's, it's hard to find that person that is really does check a lot of all the boxes, as much as one can, right? And so that was Brad. And so I looked at it from who's the person that I want to become like from a character, from a morals, from a values perspective, who has that? And that's how I chose him.
Yeah. Your process is making me think of, I had an acting teacher that used to say, don't be medium. And she
Mm.
meant like, if you're going to make an acting choice, commit to it. Because there's nothing worse than watching someone like do stand up or do something and they're like unsure of themselves. And it's so awkward because you feel what they feel. And that's what it's making me think of, where like you didn't like have this big experience and then be like, okay, I'm going to just like one at a time do something. You like radically shifted and it radically impacted your life. So, like during that time, was your wife like on board immediately? Did you have to like have that conversation? Like, what was that like? Because that's a big change. Like, you were changing everything basically.
Yeah. My wife's awesome. And that whole medium, don't be medium comment reminds me of the verse. It's like, don't be lukewarm, either be hot or be cold, right? In the Bible. Because it's like, he'll judge the people that are lukewarm way harder than the ones that are cold, right? Or that are, because like care about something, do something.
Yeah.
Um, I married up. I don't know how my wife has dealt with me. Like, I mean, truly, she's just the most incredible human being I've ever met. And I believe that one of the things that we did correctly right out of the get go of our relationship is I was very clear on who I was. Right. I'm like, uh, I'm me and I'm not going to not be me. And like, I'm going to be crazy and insane and change the world and all of that. And she was bought in. And I'll speak to men here. Like, you got to lead, right? Like, you got to like step up and lead. It doesn't even matter if you mess up, just lead. Like, just actually take responsibility. And the one thing that I've always done for my wife is I've always made sure that she's taken care of, right? Like, no matter what, I will make sure. I mean, we weren't even married, and we're over when we were overseas, and she's sick with an intestine-eating parasite, basically on her deathbed. I mean, like a dirt runway and island in the Philippines with the emergency room with ants crawling up the wall, and and I'm spending spent $30,000-$40,000 to like get her home, right? And it's like you just take responsibility, right? And so I think that um I think that gender like I can't speak for all women. I'm not a woman. I believe I'm more of a traditionalist, but my wife wanted to support me. She wanted to be bought in. She wanted to be led. She wanted to get behind something. And she's like, if you take care of me and like you lead and you be the person you say you're going to be, like I'm here. I'm here for it. And we built a pretty incredible life together. And while she thought I was crazy, I, I mean, she always says, she's like, I saw something, Now, I will say this from a personal level, that was probably the time when I was most aware of how drastic of a shift I was asking of her. And that was actually like I wasn't afraid she was going to leave me. Like that was never a fear, but I'm like I never want her to get to a point where she feels uh, like she's not on the same team or there's a disconnect or that I'm just going insane. That's actually the reason why I brought her with me to Brad. Because I'm like I'm about to go do I remember when we sold all of our everything, all of our investments and put it all into Bitcoin. Everything. All like that's an insane move, right? And that was after Brad. But like when we went to Brad, I was like, I'm just gonna do everything that Brad says because I don't want to be poor. It's like, I need her to understand the person that we're learning from. And I remember we walked in, and if you don't know Brad, like Brad's very, very, very wealthy and like has, 12,000 square foot house that you walk into, and the door is like 10 feet high, and he's got like a rock climbing wall in the basement, and, a tunnel underneath the ground to his guest, like literally a tunnel you walk through to his guest house. Just insanity. Right. And so I took my wife out there, and we go to bed the first night. We stayed in their guest room, and she goes, yeah, you can do whatever he says. That's cool. Right. You know what I mean? So, props to my wife. She's incredible. I don't know how she dealt with it, but again, I think that part of that does, credit where credit's due to her, but also I think part of the reason was because I stepped up and took responsibility.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is a principle that I fought for a while in my 20s was like gender roles and all these things. And the more that I have returned to like, I guess, truth or the way that I was raised,
Traditional.
is
Yeah.
I'm like, it makes sense. There's yin and yang energy. There is like polarity in a relationship. So like if everyone is over here in the masculine role, then there's no, like it's like a magnet. They're
Yeah.
just bouncing off each other. So it's a principle. Like there is this level of like a leader has to exist in the household.
You have to. And like I was at, I go, men, like men suck. I get it. Right. But like that, just because men suck doesn't mean the principle's wrong. Right. Like just because people aren't stepping up. But I go, when people are like, oh, so like you think you're in charge of your wife? I'm like, no, I'm just higher than her in the hierarchy. But we're a team. We make all of our decisions together. And they're like, well, what if you guys disagree? I'm like, well, then we work together to figure out a solution where we agree. But at the end of the day, I'm responsible for her because if I make a decision and I mess up and I get into trouble, it's my responsibility. If my wife makes a decision and messes up, it's my responsibility, right? Like I'm the one that has to deal with it. Why? Because that's my job, right? And it's like that's what men are designed to do is we're designed to literally take beating and to shield and to go and protect and like Leah is the most I mean she's an amazing mother. Like such a natural like I'm like how you know to do these things, right? It's instinctual, but she's protected, right? And we are 100% a team. I would never do. Someone asked me, they're like, "Well, what if I went and asked you something and you said one thing?" And I'm like, "Okay." And then I went. She's like, "And I went and asked your wife, and she said something else." I'm like, we are united as one." And she's like, what if you disagree on something?" I was like, "Then whatever one makes the most logical sense, that's the one we're collectively behind." And they're like, "What if you can't agree?" I'm like, "Then I'll back her." And he's like, "Well, isn't that submitting to your wife?" And I'm like, "No, that's called leading." Right? Like that. What do you mean? You know what I'm saying? And I think that the better you understand marriage, the better you can be in business as an entrepreneur, having a number one and a number two role. The better you can be in life, the more fulfilled you're going to be. The better this. And I'm not to say that there's not men that are a certain way or women that are, of course not. But if you study principles and you go back to truth and you go, how are we designed? Right? There's a lot of things as a man that I wish I did not have to be the one to deal with. Right? I'm like, I wish that wasn't the case. I wish I didn't have to do this, but I do because that's how we're designed. Right? And it's a very freeing thing when you're like, it's just my responsibility. I'll just take care of it. And to anyone listening right now, we've covered a lot. If you're sitting there going, how do I get freedom? How do I change my life? How do I get ahead? How do I feel fulfilled? How do I feel like I'm moving forward? Take responsibility. Like take responsibility for your life, take on responsibility for other people, right? Like get some skin in the game. Like actually have something that you're required to do and have ownership of. Because like that's when you start to realize, oh, this is what I was made for. And I thought, again, going back to freedom two or freedom from versus freedom two, when it was forced upon me, it was the worst thing in the world. But I've also been the person that, I grew up, my first job was, 25, well, my first real job was $25,000 a year, right? I've also made, six or 700,000 in a year take home with no responsibility, right? With no kids, no anything to wake up and be like, who even, now what? Like, who cares, right? What am I going to do with it? You've got to have meaning. And I think the fastest way to change your life, at least as a man, take responsibility, get some responsibility, get people depending on you, put yourself in a position where you have to lead and you'll grow up real quick.
Yeah. I love that. And in in wrapping up, I'm curious how that has shifted for you or increased for you. Like you're wearing a hat that says girl dad. You've talked
Yeah.
about your daughter already. I guess a twofold question. One, like as you're looking now, you have this fresh perspective on religion, this deeper understanding of a relationship. Like, how are you taking all of that in imparting it into your daughter, and like how has that changed for you as you became a father?
That might be the hardest question you asked. Um, I remember I asked a lot of people for advice before our first daughter was born, and we have baby number two on the way, another girl, which is so exciting. Um, and everyone was like, everyone, honestly, everyone gave garbage advice. That's another thing that I learned. It's like most people's advice sucks, right? Like, no, like, oh, ask around, respect people's opinion. It's like, no, they're like some people are just wrong, right? But like a lot of the advice I got was garbage. Oh, it's so hard, or it's this, or your life is over, or you have no freedom, or kids are whatever. And Brad, when I asked him, I love Brad. He's like, ah, kids aren't that hard, dude. And I'm like, you are literally the only person that has ever told me that. So I'm inclined to believe you, but why? He's like, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like the biggest challenge is that they're just always there, nonstop, right? Like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You never get a break from it. That's the hard part. But everything else is like, it's not that complicated. But they'll also make you really, really aware of all of your own flaws. And I, when Willow was born, and now that she's kind of talking and running around, and like she's very aware of things, right? She's very smart. It's crazy how intelligent she is. Um, I think Brad was right. Like, it's like take responsibility, like show up, right? Be there in the morning for her, put her to bed, and know that for me at least, like as the father, like you're the most important person in her life. You have more effect on her life than anything else. And credit to my sister. I have four sisters, and credit to my sister. She called me one time and she's like, "Can I give you a piece of unsolicited advice about how to raise Willow?" And I'm like, "Of course." She goes, "Just tell her she's beautiful every single day and don't stop." And I'm like, and I have every single day since, every single day, many times, multiple times a day. But it's like when you can put your focus on that, and when you're intentional, and when you're present, and when you look, it's like it, it's pretty, to me at least, it's pretty obvious what you need to do, right? It's like it's pretty obvious to be like, hey, like don't like be someone that she would look up to, right? And like show her, like make sure your actions reflect what you believe, because by the time she's old enough for you to tell her things, right? Like teach her things, she's already made up 80% of her mind without knowing it because of what she watched, right? And so I think that I've never felt more, even when I got married, I never felt more responsibility as a man than when I had a daughter, right? Like when a child is born. Um, and I'm very, very thankful and grateful that I went through the transformation that I did with my faith before having a child versus after, because I could see the horrific damage that it could cause if you, if I hadn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, well, this was amazing and
Yeah. It was fun. Thank you. These were good questions.
so deep. Yeah, it's I was so excited to talk to you because we did have this similar background, but also kind of went different ways and, had these different experiences. So what's next for you? Like you now have baby number two on the way. Congratulations. That's really exciting. What is next for you personally? And then I know you have some cool stuff happening professionally that we can talk about also.
Yeah. Baby number two is on the way. Getting ready for that. Uh, One was a drastic world shift, just from, oh, we have a kid now. Two, I think is going to be probably just as drastic in many ways. So just getting prepared for that, getting systems in place, finding a nanny that's like, or, someone that can help on a more full-time basis. We got my sister's getting married this year, or one of my sisters is, and so we're gonna go to her wedding. And that's over in Scotland, so that's fun. So a lot of that, just a lot of dad, like young family, young kids, stuff. That's pretty much in the personal life, and a lot of studying of religion and apologetics. Like that will continue on a more personal level for sure. So I think that's probably it from a personal level. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And then from a professional level, I know you have an ebook coming out. You have some other cool stuff happening. Like talk about kind of where you're seeing the Golden Mike method going that
Yeah.
direction.
So I have a company called the Golden Mike. We help service providers, grow their businesses to seven figures using the Golden Mike. And we have a bunch of stuff planned for this year around that. We have an event coming up here. We do those every quarter, but we have I think the big focus right now is we've gotten to a point where we need to take the messaging more mainstream or broader at least. And we're really focusing on doubling down and helping people understand attention. So how to capture attention, how to control attention, how to convert attention, and how like the game of business is essentially a game of attention. And so we got the book ebook coming out on that. We're starting with a guide, and then we're actually going to have a book. It'll be called Attention Models. And so we can link information on that down in the chat or down in the description. But we're also going to be doing another podcast. And so we're kind of actually splitting where we're keeping the Golden Mike really business focused and really kind of using the Golden Mike, the podcast, the show, the channel, like everything that we're doing there to dive deep into business related things. And we're going to be coming out with a new front facing brand that's more me. Kind of think different theory, right? But obviously it'll be a different name on that. And so we got lots planned. Try to be the example for our clients, get things systemized, grow the team. But we want to, we have a $10 million target for the company in our head, right? So 3 years, 10 million bucks. And that's kind of the goal, is just shifting everything towards that, simplifying it down and getting more people in on the Golden Mike method.
Yeah, nice.
Our,
Love
our
it.
big, our big goal is we want people to get paid so they can be free. And
Yes.
my message isn't for everyone. Our business isn't for everyone. If you don't like what I have to say, good. Like, and we're not for you, right? But for those entrepreneurs that they got an entrepreneurship, they want to be free. They want freedom, 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 right? Like they want freedom from, they want freedom to, they want to have control. They want to build and design a life. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. And it's just like, just dang it. I want to do work that I find meaningful. I don't want to worry about bills on a daily basis. I don't need to make $100 million, but I need to make enough to where I can do some stuff. I can have some fun. I can work on things and with people that I find meaningful. That's who the Golden Mike method's for. And so getting as many people bought into that vision as possible is our goal.
Yeah. Well, I'm bought in. I'm
Yeah.
in it, and it's been amazing. And this conversation has been amazing. Thank you so much. We're
Yeah.
gonna link everything in the show notes here, and then we'll also link Josh's Facebook and Instagram. It's at Josh Forti, right, on
Yeah.
Instagram.
If you want some entertainment, go to the Facebook page. Uh, I have some takes on there. I make everybody mad, and I don't even try. But then again, so did Jesus, and I'm like, I'm trying to be more like Jesus. So if people are mad, probably a good thing because they're just mad at the ideas.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, there's always some good conversations happening
There
on
always
Josh's
is. It's
Facebook
fun.
page.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so
Thank you
much.
so much, Brittany. I really, really appreciate it. It was a great interview. I appreciate your time.
Awesome.